And so when we go to visit, instead of saying, hey, come to us, take a number, fill out a form, we go to them as friends. We go to them with the attitude first, how can I help you? How can I serve you?
Welcome back, everybody. This is Sister Liz Schoberg, and you are listening to In the Company of Charity podcast by the Daughters of Charity. And I am here, as always, with my co-host, Sister Elizabeth. Welcome, Sister Elizabeth.
Oh, Sister Liz, thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction to our podcast.
Listen, our podcast intros are just, boom,
They
stellar.
They are. They really are. Choreographed and scripted perfectly. It's wonderful.
With our awesome energy here, we are recording this on Good Friday.
We are. Yeah.
Can I say a happy Good Friday to you?
Yeah, I guess you can say a happy Good Friday. I mean, you know,
The Lord died for us.
pastor today, he very quick homily. He every once in a while does these little one-liners or two-liners, and he said, just remember today that there is no Easter without a Good Friday. That's the bad news. The good news is there's no Good Friday without Easter. I think that's how he said it, right? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so there's always the good, the bad and the good, and one transforms into the other. I mean, he didn't go into all that, but that was it. 2 lines, we all moved on.
Beautiful.
And I was like, yeah, that's all we need to hear. That's all we need to hear.
I have to say, I literally almost broke down into tears last night at our Holy Thursday Mass.
Me too. I
like,
actually
we're
did
all
cry.
together.
Oh my gosh.
God is here.
I am so glad you said that.
For real, I was emotional.
During the procession, with the Eucharist, right? And Father Tom asked the Eucharistic ministers to come out, to walk with him, and he had these 2 young women carrying candles, and it was the most profound sense of presence I felt in a really long time, and it was like, I don't know, it was so powerful, and I just started crying. That I've never been so grateful for a mask where no one could kind of see me going, oh. I said, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. I'm wondering if other people just kind of felt the intensity of what we had missed, right at the time of the pandemic closed, that ability to communally grieve, to be in this place where, like I said, Father said today, we can't be at Easter if we don't do this. If we don't have Good Friday, then there is no Easter, and that there really isn't an Easter if we haven't journeyed through Good Friday. So I'm so glad to hear you also have the gift.
No, I was seriously emotional. It was special, and
yeah,
the people. It was bilingual. Obviously, we're in Southern Texas, so Spanish and English, and at the time of the Our Father, the priest sometimes does this. He'll say, now we're going to say the Our Father, and you say it in whatever language you want to say. And so you can hear everyone just praying, and it's like the Spanish is there, the English is there, and people are just worshiping God in the way that in together, right? It wasn't, we're going to have the Spanish Mass and we're going to have the English Mass, but all together. And I think that was just something so special about it.
Wow.
It just got me.
Yeah. I hope others have had the same experience. By the time you hear this, it'll be Easter Tuesday.
Yes.
And so I guess, just take some time to reflect back and think about what were the emotions of the last few days, because clearly we're just at the beginning now, but I can imagine by Easter, it's going to be pretty intense. So much we've missed. So many things we're not able to do. We couldn't venerate the cross, at least here, and we couldn't do that. But we were able to do it communally. It's very different, but no less prayerful and no less powerful in its in the intensity of this time of the year. So anyways, well, the 2 of us with the gift of tears.
It was
I hope
totally
others,
the Holy Spirit.
I hope others have also experienced it, and no, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You can kind of be like, oh my God, people are going to see me crying. But it's a real gift. It's a real gift. Yeah. To feel that.
Well,
Well,
I think this interview that we're going to present to you all is really another excellent and profound, very deep interview about the Society of Vincent de Paul and the good work that they do, which is, their primary thing is to visit people and to befriend them and, to be in their lives. And it's such a gift. And so Tim Williams, tell us a little bit about him
can
and
I just
what we're
tell
going
you,
to
I
hear.
didn't know Mr. Williams, Tim, before the interview. I had someone had recommended that I speak with him because I was really interested in speaking with someone about the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and they recommended. I couldn't have been more delighted. He is a gem. He is just such a great guy, very enthusiastic and knowledgeable about his work. He'll tell you the story about how he got involved. I don't want to no spoiler alerts or anything like that. We'll let him tell that story. But I found him to be a very humble man, but also very wise. He obviously is the charism of St. Vincent and Frederick Ozanam and Sister Rosalie Rondeau, are all very much a part of his life. He is the National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in the United States. And he really, he talks a lot about the difference between training and formation, like training to do things, and formation is kind of the difference between how and why, right?
Mm.
And that I thought was really important. But he talks a lot, about just the way that the society itself shows dignity to those who are poor and vulnerable, and how the home visit, going out to people's houses, seeing them there, really opens both the member, the St. Vincent de Paul member, as well as the the person seeking help, helps to create a relationship, which is really, I think, a core piece of what the society does and contributes to the church, and certainly affords that to those who are living in poverty and who are vulnerable. So
It's the
it was
culture of encounter, man.
yeah,
It is.
yeah. I just enjoyed him so much, and I think everyone will when they hear him speak and just hear the fidelity to the charism, to his faith, to his community, really, to his community, to see all people as friend and neighbor is really a gift,
Yeah, I think we're a little biased, of course, being a part of the
Slightly.
Vincentian family.
Slightly, yeah.
But we have these lay people who are just as important, and they inspire us, and they're living out this charism that we have in such a beautiful way that, I think people are going to get inspired. And if you don't know anything about the Society of Vincent de Paul, you probably already do, but go find them. They're everywhere.
Mhm.
They are in so many parishes in more countries that even the daughters or the Vincentian priests are in. So, they're our largest branch in the family.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
doing such good work.
Yeah, so hope everyone enjoys the interview, our conversation. Definitely check out the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, the charism of Frederick Ozanam, Rosalie Rondeau, how they really brought about this society in a way to help people even beyond the service of the original groups of the St. Vincent and St. Louise. So enjoy it. I know you're going to fall in love with this guy, and check out the St. Vincent de Paul Society in your area for sure.
Yep. And keep us in your prayers. And we, as always, are praying for you.
Yeah, it might be belated, but I hope everyone has a great Easter and wonderful Easter season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, into the resurrection and Pentecost and Ascension, and it's a great time
Onward
of year.
And upward.
There you go.
Onward and upward.
Upward. Right.
God bless you guys.
So welcome everyone. This is Sister Elizabeth, and I'm here with Tim Williams, who is the National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And as you know, we've talked about the St. Vincent de Paul Society different times in our podcast. We have a real live St. Vincent de Paul member here to tell us about the society. We're very excited because, as you know, the Vincentian family, as we've talked about in the podcast, is huge, 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 and it has many different layers. You know, there's the Daughters of Charity, the Vincentian priests, the consecrated members, and of course, then there's the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And so we're just really glad that Tim is here with us today, and he has a story to tell. He is, as I said, currently the National Director of Formation in St. Louis, but he came to St. Louis through Texas, where I'm not sure, is that where you're from, Tim? Texas?
No, I actually grew up in the Milwaukee area in
Oh,
Wisconsin. And then
okay.
after my time in the Army, I moved to Texas. But my wife and I were there, raised our kids there for 30 years.
Wow, that's great. And so now you've moved to Missouri to take on this directorship. But tell us about how you got started in the society and kind of, what's led you to this
Yeah.
position. And then we'd like to talk a little bit about what all that means for the society, for the care of the poor, and for the
Yeah.
Vincentian family.
Yeah. Well, when my wife and I became empty nesters, all the kids grown and gone, all of a sudden, you look around and you say, well, I can't really coach Little League anymore or be a scout leader or, you could go teach faith formation, but, you want to leave that for the parents of the kids who are in it. And so we were both talking about how can we, find some new activities, some new way to serve in the church. We've got so many ministries here. I was traveling on business one week. I was actually in Germany, and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul came to our parish to do an invitation to serve. And my wife listened to it all, went to the information night. She was so excited, she called me. And so I'm in Germany. I get a call from my wife, and she tells me about it because we both said we don't want to be in a conference table ministry. We want to go
Uh,
out and, as St. Vincent said, love God with the strength of our arms and the sweat of our brow. So she calls and tells me this is exactly what we're looking for. And I said, you're right, it is. She said, I'm glad you feel that way. I signed us both up already. So that's how I joined the society originally.
that's
Uh,
great.
and like so many people who join the society, we do surveys and just conversations with other members. So many people join in order to do, to
Hmm.
serve, to put faith into action.
Yeah.
And they only kind of learn later, as I did, that the primary purpose of the society is the spiritual growth of its members, that all that service is primarily a means towards our growth in holiness, which I describe to new members in our Ozanam orientation, that to me, that's almost one of the central ironies of
Hmm.
this particular vocation, that we dedicate ourselves to helping others, and ultimately we're the ones that are gaining the most out of it by
Yeah.
growing closer to Christ.
So let's just backtrack a little bit because
Yeah.
so the St. Vincent de Paul Society, or really its formal name is the Society of St. Vincent de Paul,
Yes.
correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we get lazy and we,
Yeah.
use the other term. But it was founded in the 1800s, right, by a young college student, Frederick Ozanam.
Yeah.
And its purpose, I think, talk a little bit about that, but also I think that most people who think about St. Vincent de Paul, the St. Vincent de Paul Society, if they see it in their church, they think right away of thrift stores and maybe food pantries and things like that. And that's not exactly
Yeah.
the main
Yeah.
focus of the work of the society. Um,
Yeah.
and I really like, just to dovetail a little bit, I really like that you brought up the holiness part first, because I think also that people think it's all about charity, but that charity is not just done devoid of
Yeah.
both the spirituality of the person, both people, those being served and those who are serving, that Christ is present in that. So I really like that. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the society's beginnings for newbies, people who don't know, and
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, we have such a rich heritage. And as you
Mm,
mentioned, is Frederick Ozanam was one of a small group of young men who were college students at the Sorbonne at the time. The society was founded in 1833. And at the time, of course, this is early days of the Industrial Revolution, and there was all new forms of poverty in this great big city, many people suffering. At the time of St. Vincent, the first focus was on the rural poor, but now all of a
mm,
sudden we had these ghettos and pollution and industry growing. And in the middle of all this in French society, you have these tensions with, the church being so closely allied with the government that a lot of people kind of rejected that and followed this Saint-Simonianism, which something we'd call these days probably utopian socialism.
mhm,
And Frederick and his friends were in a club called the Conference of History. And in the Conference of History, they debated, academic issues, and they avoided politics, but they just about anything else they would debate. So Frederick and his Catholic friends often aligned opposite these adherents to this Saint-Simonianism. And in one of their debates, one of those fellows challenged them and said, well, look, we'll grant you the church did a lot of good in history,
mhm.
but what's the good of the church today? Show us your works. And Frederick and his friends took that very seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
he was brilliant. He was a great debater. He probably could have just shut him down with some really smart argument, but instead they went back, they talked about it, they prayed about it. And, the legendary beginning is Frederick declared, we will go to the poor.
Mhm,
And that's how the society began. And it really was a way to show the good of the church by serving personally, not having, a wealthy person open their homes to the poor once in a while, not having a soup
mhm.
kitchen people would come to, but to go as servants to the homes of the poor.
Yeah.
And that day that we date as our founding is April 23rd, 1833, which was Frederick's 20th birthday, if you can
Wow.
imagine
I
that.
didn't realize he was that young.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. So all you young folks, all you young listeners out there,
I know. That's
there
exactly
is
right.
there is so much you can do. So much you can do by just following your faith and stepping up to a challenge sometimes when people really, challenge you
Yeah,
to say, so what good are you doing? Well, show
yeah,
them what good you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. I didn't realize that. So continue. How
Yeah, so it's we think of our Vincentian virtues, simplicity, humility, gentleness, selflessness, and zeal. And so to me, the society was founded in humility. It was Frederick and his friends saying, they're right. We're not living our faith.
mhm,
And that's really what it was founded on. And so in those earliest days, Emmanuel Bailly, who was one of the founders, he was a middle-aged man at the time, but the young men met in his offices, and he was kind of a mentor to them. And he knew of Blessed Rosalie Rondeau, who
a
was
daughter of
sort of
charity,
a
we'll have to
daughter of
say.
charity. Exactly. And
Uh-huh.
she's kind of like, for people not, if anyone listening to your podcast probably is familiar with her, but
Yeah.
Rosalie Rondeau was kind of the Mother Teresa of 1830s, well, really 19th century Paris.
This is a good
And
prompt for us to do a little bit more about Sister Rosalie Rondeau for sure.
oh,
But
oh,
yeah,
I love
there,
her. She's
there,
such
she's
a
amazing.
diminutive but heroic figure.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
And so the young man kind of, she took them a bit under her wing in those early days. We think about now in our conferences, we get phone calls from people, and so we go out. But you're six young men in Paris in 1833. How do you find the people? You don't
Mm,
just go knock on doors. And so Rosalie, through the many ministries that she had, knew a lot of the families. And so she would assign families to the pairs of young men who would go out to visit. And she would talk to them afterwards, really an apostolic reflection
hmm
about the visits they had made. And I'm not sure that it's recorded this way in any of the histories, but for me, kind of connecting the dots, this organization was first called the Conference of Charity. But in those early months, to me, Rosalie is the link to the Vincentian charism. So that
hmm
by the end of the first year, it was already referred to as the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. and officially changed its name to that as well.
Wow.
So she's such an important and powerful influence and example for us even to this day.
Yeah, and it's so great because there is still that connection. I know when I was in Macon, Georgia, we started a St. Vincent de Paul Society there, and it was fun. You know, it was really exciting for us as Daughters of Charity to kind of share that side of the story and be again kind of like Rosalie and Frederick. That union, that connection is very much there because no one group can do it all by themselves. Right. We all have to, and I think it's all not just about the doing, even though that's often what brings us to something, but in your role now as formator, as the one who forms those who go and do, talk a little bit about the spirituality that's brought to this. I know, as we said, everyone thinks the St. Vincent de Paul Society is about soup kitchens and thrift stores, and they have all these memories of that, but really the home visit is the core work or the first work of the members of the society, which I also think is interesting because, you know, St. Vincent de Paul, and this certainly would have come from Rosalie, the Daughters of Charity were founded to go out and serve the poor because at that time most religious women were cloistered, and anyone who needed help, anyone who was living in poverty would have to come to the sisters to seek help or come to the church. And so our founding was in essence the home visit as well. And so to have that part of the founding of the society is also, I think, a nice connection, and would have definitely been brought one through the spirituality found in the church, but also in St. Vincent de Paul's message of reaching out. So long way into, tell us a little bit about how you form someone who is coming to this society today, and maybe hearkening back to your own formation when you first came.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate when I first joined that a fellow named, and you may know him, Father Ron Ramson, was the spiritual advisor at the Diocesan Council of Dallas at the time. He also, prior to that, had been National Director of Formation for the Society, but I became a formator there in Dallas pretty early in my membership, and spent a lot of time with Father Ron, and still count him as a very dear friend and mentor, although with COVID restrictions, I haven't been able to see him in person in quite some time. But, you know, I kind of rebuilt that formation program in Dallas so that it did a couple of things. Because I come from a marketing background before working full time for the society.
Oh, you mean you have a life outside of the society?
I used to. Not anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's great to bring those gifts and talents to the work. Yeah. That's great. So there's the marketing part.
Yeah, and so one of the things I learned over the years in marketing is that very often, we come up with, slogans and messages, and I think they're so great, and then 2 months later, we're ready to move on. But I learned years ago that we might be tired of saying it, but there's a lot of people hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And so when we set up our Ozanam orientation program, and that's what new members go to first. It's about a little longer than a half day that really kind of gives you a good overview of the heritage and the spirituality. Big chunk of it talking about the home visit and the reason for it and the history of it, but really emphasizing that first thing I said here, which is our primary purpose is our own growth and holiness, our growth and holiness together. And I think everything has to emphasize that. We can't expect people to go out, and read 14 volumes of St. Vincent's, correspondence, conferences, and documents.
Yeah, I was going to say, other than a translator, I don't think anyone has read them all.
Yeah, I might enjoy that, but most of our members won't. And so, for me, my primary role is to kind of take that and distill it, not into marketing slogans, but into digestible bites. My sense is that all our members are really hungry for that. And many of them may not have access to a library of Vincentian materials or just don't have the time for it. And so the more we can do to just bring it to them, to serve the members the same way the members serve the poor, I mean, that's the key to it. So, this past year we've been, I'm not going to say forced, we've been allowed to become more innovative in the way that we reach people, and members have become more open to things like Zoom, because as hungry as people are for it, we don't have 1,000 people around the country to necessarily present things at the same depth as we can share, when we've got, Sister Karen and Father Ron and me and others, that can reach every part of the country with those messages.
And there's quite a few materials. I mean, if people want, and we'll make sure to include the link to the society's page website for the United States. There's a ton of material out there. I mean, there's just so much that people can look at and see about learning more about just the connection between that sense of holiness, that way in which that's brought into the service of the home visit. And we should say a home visit is just what it sounds like. It's two members, a kind of 2 by 2, as Jesus sent the apostles out. It's going out to someone in need and really getting to know them. I think also, isn't friendship or spiritual friendship another component of just the charism of the society as well?
Yeah, we have what we call our essential elements:
Hmm.
spirituality, service, and friendship. And we consider them co-equal in the sense that, while, growth in spirit is our primary purpose, they're co-equal in the sense that, our service is a means towards our growth in holiness. Our service also serves our friendship. Blessed Frederick wrote a letter to a friend once talking about friendship. And it's one of the best definitions of what we mean with that essential element, that he said, have you ever noticed friends become closer when they do things together? And if you think about it, you have a barbecue, go out to a movie, and now you have this shared physical experience along with your friendship, and it grows stronger. And he said, if those earthly things have such an effect, imagine how much more so the friendship will grow when you're pursuing holiness, when you're doing these acts of charity. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of friendship, this spiritual bond between us. And that's a bond that's shared with the poor that we serve, who, in our time and in all times, one of the greatest things that they suffer is a separation from the rest of the community. A poor person can walk down the street and you won't know they're poor because they dress like we do,
Right.
but they don't go into the Starbucks. But they might look through the windows and see another place that's just not for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we go to visit, instead of saying, hey, come to us, take a number, fill out a form, we go to them as friends. We go to them with the attitude first, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Not let me check the boxes and see if you're eligible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an attitude more than a specific set of behaviors, that I'm coming to get to know you and try to help you the best way that I can.
Yeah, I mean, I was a member of the society when I was in Macon, Georgia. It's the St. Catherine Drexel Conference, which was actually kind of 3 different parishes had come together to create this, because in Georgia, Catholics are not in great abundance, so they kind of bonded and banded together. But I was always struck by the way in which the friendship grew among the members themselves. These are all folks who didn't necessarily know one another before, and they sometimes a new member would come and they would get teamed up with the old, a member who had been there before, just to learn the ropes, and you could see them bond. The other part that was always fascinating for me was when and I was spiritual moderator, but I also did home visits as well. So when we would come back and people would advocate for the family that they visited, they spoke as though they were friends with this person, not well, I have this case, and these are the facts of the case, and this is why I think if we can afford it, they will like, this is Joe, and let me tell you this, more about who he was, or who this family is, and then what their need was. But this is who these people are, and this is who they are in the face of God, and this is why we should be reaching out and helping them, and then how those relationships develop, because it's not a one-off, right?
Yeah.
The home visit it could be many times that you go out to visit.
Absolutely. If we go back to kind of the earliest days of the society, those families Sister Rosalie, paired the young men up with, they more or less adopted those families. They
Yeah,
visited them
yeah.
regularly. They brought firewood, they tutored their kids, they had a real relationship. And at times over the years, it swings back and forth. Sometimes we kind of get away from that because we're doers.
Mm,
We're going to pay that bill. That problem's set.
right.
We're going to move on to the next one.
Next one, yeah.
But our rule tells us, just as you said, that we're called to form relationships based on trust and friendship, and to not be judgmental, to try to understand their problems as we would a brother or sister.
Yeah.
And so, I've always thought a great way to look at our rule was to look at it less as a prescriptive thing that says, here's the things you do, but more as a descriptive thing. So in other words, if an outside observer watched me on a home visit, would they write those words? Oh, Tim really is forming a relationship based on trust and friendship.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier, I think, to understand and kind of internalize the rule when you think of it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And as you were saying, not coming out with kind of a checklist or a form that has to get filled out. And that information gets gathered because you need identification kinds of information. You need to know how much the bill is, and you need to be able to help somebody understand how to read their bill. So it's not, but it's all done. I mean, I've seen over and over, there's like an intuitive nature within members of the society to say, I'm going to get to know someone before I start messing in their business, and letting them reveal their need in a way that's dignified. It's so beautiful, I think. And I think, just as I'm listening to you, I can hear that formation is so deep, So as somebody's kind of moving on, so we have a new member comes and they're learning the ropes, and where does the formation go from there? Like how would I, as a member, how do you see that formation? As a daughter of charity, we're told formation is forever, right? Like you're always being formed in one way or another. And so when you're in the initial stages, you're thinking, please God, let this be over. Let's just get to the, but then you do realize that you never stop learning. And so how do you help those members maybe who feel like, hey, I've been here forever, I know the ropes? How do you help them to continue to keep their minds and their hearts open as
That's a great question, and there's a couple different parts to the answer. I think when we talk about formation, and I obviously present about this a lot, but we have a foundation paper in the Society on Formation, and what we say is formation is a lifelong process, a process of becoming. And so as people have a better understanding of that, they're going to be more willing to approach it that way. I think in just kind of the way we use the words, we say formation and it becomes synonymous with a training workshop.
Yeah.
But it isn't that. I mean, a lot of it, most of it is going to happen in conference meetings where we share together and individually as we, pursue our own formation. So for us to kind of keep people's mindsets towards formation, we provide things, and obviously we have a lot of conferences. I think it's 4,500 around the country, and each one of them has a spiritual advisor. And so this in-depth discussion of what is formation and how can you help kind of keeps that alive in the conferences. But we provide them with tools for those spiritual reflections in their conferences, which includes, over the last couple of years, a kind of a new focus on apostolic reflection.
Yeah. I'm
which
going to
is
refer everyone back to our episode with Sister Joanne Vasha,
yeah,
where she talked about apostolic reflection. We'll make sure to kind of post that one as well. So, yeah, so
yeah,
apostolic
yeah.
reflection, it's the way to go. It could revolutionize the world, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I personally am very influenced by Father Hugh O'Donnell's two
Yeah.
paired papers, Vincentian Discernment and Apostolic Reflection.
Hmm.
And I was on an airplane once on a business trip, having read those papers recently, and thinking, well, now I got to read some Benet of Canfield, and I need to read
Yeah.
some Jan van Riesbroek, some going back a few levels in influences on Vincent, and my wife still laughs remembering the Skype notes she got from me on the airplane with passages of a 14th century Flemish
But
mystic. But
yeah, you never know where this formation is going to take you, right?
yeah,
So
it's
you would think
it's
we were going to know
crazy.
about this stuff even. But
Yeah,
you then also realize that, St. Vincent de Paul never wrote a book, right? He was a letter writer. He
yeah,
wrote letters. Everything we know about him, and St. Louise really is what they wrote in letters and
yeah,
in conferences, conferences just being talks that they gave that, thank God, somebody sat behind a pole and kind of copied the words, because
yeah,
Vincent never really wanted his words to be written down,
yeah,
didn't want them taking that time, but thank God they did, because
yeah,
we do have his spirit in these letters, both to the Vincentian priests and
yeah,
to the Daughters of Charity. And I realize as I'm listening to you, when we talk about the Vincentian family, it's not just people who are connected because of St. Vincent, just the name, but just the words that you speak are the words that, I as a daughter of charity speak, and I know Vincentian fathers speak, and those who are part of the Miraculous Medal Society, that we all have that sense of this going out to the other in a
yeah,
spirit of friendship and gentleness. I love that that's one of the words that you all use as well, in this sense of simplicity, where
yeah,
we're not going out with any agenda. We're
yeah,
not going out with other than to be of service. There's nothing that we're going to demand of somebody.
yeah,
So I think that's really beautiful, and the idea that's a lifelong process is also,
yeah,
I think, a part of what makes Vincentians continue to kind of innovate, as Vincent tells us to be inventive into infinity. That we
yeah,
should never stop learning how to be of service, you
yeah,
know. So I think that's wonderful. When I listen to that, I think, oh, this is such a strong and wonderful charism.
yeah.
So where do you see what you're doing now? You have anything in the works that there are new innovations, things that you're thinking about as far as bringing to the members, or a new level of formation for them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just kind of germs of ideas right now.
Hmm.
I'm still less than a year into the position, so.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
well, though it's funny, I made a funny picture of what my priority and time management cooktop looks like. There's two big burners, and then there's just nothing but back burners
Yeah.
all the way across.
Yeah.
So we'll say this one's a back burner, but
Uh-huh.
the idea is to kind of take advantage of technology to offer not so much the initial for the things you have to do in person, retreats, and we do some of those via Zoom now
Hmm.
because we have to, but in the longer term to look at, what about a Vincentian University for our members, where I can get a lot more in-depth information, some of it via recordings online, some maybe reading recommendations. You
Hmm.
really want to dive in, read this, and maybe it offers certificates, or maybe it's just at your own pace, go through this, because for me at least, I think for a lot of people, learning more about our heritage, about the life and the works of
Hmm.
Vincent and of Louise and of Rosalie and of Frederick, especially those four, um, adds so much more depth to my understanding of the spirituality. In a way that ties into what both Vincent and Frederick emphasize so often is, as Frederick put it, religion serves less to think than to act. So
Hmm.
So looking at how they actually lived along with their words adds so much more depth. And then the idea there is not just to say that now you as an individual, you've got this, breadth and depth of understanding of our heritage and spirituality, but instead that I know you're going to go share that with the other members.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of people out there right now who are doing that by themselves, and I don't know who they are necessarily. And so the more people we can spark that flame in to set more hearts on fire within the society and drawing more members to us, the better off we are. We can't do that by bringing 50 people a week in here for a class.
Yeah,
Well, we don't
exactly.
have the money for that or the resources, but to be able to reach so many people, and we've got such brilliant, wonderful Vincentians here in the society that can contribute to those materials, and they can stay there and be available whenever anybody wants to access it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of my big dreams.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds like kind of taking what you might think of as introductory materials, like get to know Vincent, get to know Louise, but to really bring those into a deeper place of saying this isn't just about learning about these people. It's about learning about what motivated them, what moved them, how the Spirit in the inception of these things, how the Holy Spirit came and infused this charism into, Vincent and Louise and Rosalie and Frederick, and to be able to talk to them about them as though they are our friends. They really are not just ancestors in the high, lofty kind of spiritual way, but they're our brothers and sisters, and that we kind of follow in their footsteps, and learn not just their story, but see how it helps us. I don't know if you have had this experience, but I used to say when I first kind of met the other Vincentians and decided and thought about being a daughter of charity, that there was this kind of feeling like there was some spiritual DNA that was waking up, that I didn't know was there, but I found the place. It was like a piece of me that, was orphaned and was finding, my parents for real. And I can see that in you. I can hear it in your voice as far as just how much the charism means and what the society means for you. So 1 year into your new position, and it sounds like you're really getting things rocking and rolling, which is great. So Tim, tell us, so somebody's listening right now, they're not sure, they find this intriguing, they want to find out more, they've heard about the society, they never really knew how to get involved, maybe there wasn't one at their church. What do I do? What does a person do right now to figure out how to get engaged with the society?
My personal recommendation is go on a business trip to Germany and tell your wife to sign you up. No.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, we operate in what we call conferences, and conferences are just a local chapter at a parish. Not every parish has a Society of St. Vincent de Paul conference, but to become a member, you join a conference. I'd prefer you try to start a conference at your parish if you don't have one.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's not as hard as everyone might think, but it's
not. And pastors are, generally, receive this idea very well. They're very open to it, particularly when they understand what we talked about earlier is, hey, this is going to make your parishioners really grow in holiness.
Right.
It's also probably going to take some work off of your table of serving the neighbors, because you're going to have this St. Vincent de Paul conference.
Right. You have some place you trust to refer people to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you want to be a member, first check and see if there's a conference at your parish. And just show up at a meeting, call the number that's probably in your parish bulletin every week, and tell them you want to join. And I promise they will welcome you with open arms.
Yeah.
If there's not one at your parish, check nearby parishes, but keep that in mind that you can start a whole new conference. We have a program called Invitation to Serve that's got lots of materials. nearby conferences, and the council, which usually encompasses, at least half a dozen conferences, or even a diocesan council for a larger area around, will also support you in all of that. But the act of joining and becoming a member itself, it starts with first just visiting that conference, meeting them, learning about what they do. I can tell you, and it varies by conference, the specific membership admission process, but in my own conferences, it's included, giving you a copy of the rule. It's not so intimidating. It's a really small book. I should have one handy to show you, but it's a very small book. It's an easy read, and it really introduces you to the society.
And the rule book is really kind of the guidelines, the way, not just the way things are done, but the why and the how and the spirit of it. Yeah.
And that's exactly how we distinguish formation from training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Training is the how, formation is the why.
The why.
And so understanding that before you make that commitment to become a member, and your local conference will take you through that and walk with you along the way.
Yeah, and if someone's having a hard time, like these might not be listed on a diocesan website, but they could go right to, and again, we'll make sure to have that link for the society in the US that they would be able to possibly find someplace.
I'm going to be bold and say, go to svdpusa.org. My phone number and email address is there.
All right. Tim Williams, he's the man. He's inviting you, whether you're in Germany or not. Call him. Someone in Germany right now is saying, I can't believe it. That man's speaking to me. He wants me to join. Okay. Well, yeah, that's great. That's great. And so, sometimes I like to end by just asking, what can we, the listeners, pray for you? How can we help you in our prayers to do what you do? What would you like us to kind of bring to the Lord when we come to him in prayer?
Well, to pray for the lonely. I think it's the greatest form of poverty that we face in our society right now. People who need their light bill paid may know to call us, but the lonely don't always know who to call. So pray for the lonely. Pray that we can find them, and pray that we can befriend them and welcome them into our community of faith.
That's beautiful. Well, we will definitely keep that in our prayer. And we're just so grateful to have you with us today. So thank you so much for being part of our podcast, and thanks for your Vincentian spirit and sharing that with us.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Well, it was a pleasure for us. Thanks so much.